Hello, here is Botond Feledy speaking from Brussels. I am head of Red Snow Consulting, political analyst, and I like to assess international relations and the risks that comes with it. Now we will be talking about the extremely interesting multi-level game of Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, why they would come to Budapest, to the capital of Hungary, to a country which will face elections with Viktor Orbán and his opposition in less than 6 months. All the actors have several motives, and we will try to decipher that, and I will give my bet and hypothesis on why all these parties are actually very interested in coming to an EU and NATO member states capital this time.
Welcome to the Visegrad Insight podcast.
We bring you global experts on the future of democracy, security, and economy.
The leading voices from Central Europe and on Central Europe.
Hosted by editors of Visegrad Insight.
Powered by Respublika Foundation from Warsaw, Poland. It's Monday, 20th of October. My name is Wojciech Przybylski. I'm editor-in-chief of Visegrad Insight. And before we begin a conversation with Botond Feledy, we will dwell quickly into the topics of the weekly outlook featured every Monday for the group of our exclusive subscribers who receive also this weekly outlook to their mailboxes. We write about Trump's hopes for peace, which are going to be sliced like Budapest salami. Now, the reference to Budapest salami is not of culinary nature. We speak of Budapest salami in the context of the old Soviet tactics developed in the mid of 20th century and employed in Budapest to dissect the opposition, to literally slice by slice so that they don't know what's coming. The autocratic actors, communist actors, were removing certain privileges, certain prerogatives of political freedoms from the opposition in Hungary, thus creating ultimately a situation in which they are winning, but they are not winning in a symbolically, big, decisive, spectacular way, but rather undercutting the objectives of their opponents, slice by slice, one by one, scoring their points. It seems, in our interpretation that we put in the weekly outlook, that Trump's hopes for setting peace, which I would say I have to treat as genuine effort to have a peace, at least his peace of mind from the world affairs, is going to be slice by slice by Vladimir Putin, who employs exactly the same tactics. And Budapest as a location fits here simply as a symbolic setting that brings back the resemblance to the tactics, which originally has been, of course, the Soviet tactics of dealing with different opposition to communist onslaught. Similarly, of course, we can see how Chinese are performing in approaching not only the US but West Europe as well, opposition and efforts to curb their expansionist imperialist project of dominance. Now, what is likely going to happen, of course, we don't know, and we invite you to listen to our conversation with Botond just moments ago. But in other news, what's interesting, and it's featured in the weekly outlook, we focus on what the European Union has been doing, also has been doing at a double speed since the news of a potential meeting between Trump and Putin are on their way. The last time they've been meeting in Alaska, the European leaders scrambled and brought in an offer that opened not only the heart, but most importantly, the ear of Donald Trump, who would listen and would adjust to some of the arguments that European leaders have delivered, along with cash on the table. Similarly here, I think an important element of the developments on the European side is that 140 billion euro loan backed by Russia's frozen central bank assets held at Euroclear will be used to make a purchase of US weapons for Ukraine. Now, until not very long ago, a Belgian prime minister, where Euroclear is located, a company, has been strongly opposing such a move to use these assets for fear of precedents, but also asymmetrical costs on the Belgian economy. Now, with the urgency of the meeting looming, Europeans need to have again some carrots for opening a conversation with Washington in order to buy sticks for Vladimir Putin, the only possible way of making Russia stop or withdraw, hopefully, from the land and from the territory of sovereign Ukraine. In the weekly outlook, we also write about new Apple renewable investments in Central Eastern Europe, quite significant, and about the Chinese Northern Sea route opening with Istanbul Bridge cargo ship that arrived in Gdańsk, paving way for a new route circumventing Indo-Pacific and arriving in Eastern Europe, with plans of the company that operates it, the so-called the Sea Legend line, promising expansion in Eastern European countries. And last but not least, we also cover civil society leaders' chatter on the Hungarian spying scandal in Brussels, with a number of experts raising points related not only to Hungarian but other countries, including Chinese and Russian espionage, while all these high-level talks and plans on defense are taking place. All of that and much more with individual countries covered from the spectrum of Central Eastern European members of European Union, but also with some highlights from Moldova, Belarus, Western Balkans, are in this week's weekly outlook, as usual for our subscribers. So I hope we can count you in as our listeners to tune in, subscribe, or donate and be part of the club of the Visegrad Insiders.
Hi, if you're enjoying this episode, why not subscribe to Visegrad Insight? This gives you access to all our latest content online, as well as to our live and online events. You can use our special promo code for Visegrad Insight podcast listeners to get 35% off. Just go to visegradinsight.eu, choose a yearly subscription, and apply code Visegrad35. And now, back to the podcast.
Right. First of all, I wanted to introduce to you a very special guest, Botond Feledy, an expert on international affairs, risk analysis, leading a consultancy firm, the Red Herring Consultancy. If that is the name.
Red Snow Consulting.
I'm sorry, Red Snow, Red Herring, Red Snow, anything unusual, anything that gets you feel a chill down the spine. This is what we do in strategic foresight and forecasting analysis. Botond is one of the premier experts in that field, coming from Budapest, living in Brussels. And an old friend, also featured on the New Europe 100 list a long time ago as a...
Exactly, 2017, almost 10 years.
That's been our common project with Financial Times and Google to list and network remarkable individuals that lead on the change and have impact in the digital age coming from Central Europe. Botond's one of them. Welcome, warm welcome to you, Botond.
Thank you very much, Wojciech. Thank you for the invitation.
As promised, I wanted to talk about the upcoming summit. The summit has just been announced end of last week. Trump had a phone call with Putin, had a meeting with Zelenskyy, announced to the world that it will be Budapest. I'm not really sure if Mr. Orbán knew about this idea or it came very naturally. In either case, I guess he is not disappointed. And what we agreed to do is to try to unpack the logic that drives the political motivations ahead of the potential summit. We still don't know if it is going to happen, when it is going to happen, but there is a drive to have this summit in Budapest from three distinct perspectives. And And Botond is going to guide us through that. We'll see if we have comments and disagreements on this. Hopefully we might, but let's see. I have to warn also our listeners, as I am on today with my little daughter, you might hear some background noise from her, and hopefully you don't mind. But now you just heard her, and I'll switch off the mic otherwise and let Botond tune in. Botond, let's start with the first question. The logic behind Trump's move. How would we understand it? I mean, there is a typical narrative in the media that Trump wanted the Nobel Peace Prize. So is he trying to earn one for the next year?
Certainly, he got some momentum from the Middle East peace process, even if this is also rather a ceasefire that is already at the moment when we speak is not really respected by the parties. So whether that is a fig leaf rather on a conflict or a real starting of a peace process, I guess it remains very much to be seen. Or that doesn't change the mindset of Donald Trump, who really sees himself as a peacemaker and believes that this might have an impact on Putin's perspective. I don't really believe it does, but Putin's reading and Trump's reading of the situation, as we have seen at several moments since his first term Helsinki meeting up to Alaska, is very different. And this strategic phone call that was placed last Thursday, just one day before Zelenskyy's visit to Washington, D.C., by Putin to Trump, I guess this was a very smart move on behalf of Putin to again sway Trump's thinking in how to approach this summit. So Trump is happy, and maybe that would be my most important note. Trump is happy to support his friends in ideology, to support the loyalists on the international scene around him. That means he is ready to credit Argentine's Milei with $20 to $40 billion swap line to save him from the next election's failure. And we have seen that he is ready to put pressure on the Brazilian justice to get Bolsonaro, his friend, freed. And he was also pressing the Israeli president to offer clemency to Benjamin Netanyahu. So in this line, it falls very well, and it is the same pattern that he is ready to have Viktor Orbán with his presence during his campaign.
Focus on Trump. I hear a lot of disbelief in state-motivated logic of Donald Trump as a president. And fair enough. I mean, he might not be really the big statesman of the 20th century. He's a 21st century politician with a bulk of different motivations that I alluded to, also including the Nobel Peace Prize. But what it seemed to be the game in the past weeks and months in the early autumn, late summer, was that after a fiasco of Alaska, Trump was allegedly furious, according to numerous news reporting, and he has been very close to sending Tomahawks missiles so essentially cruise missiles of high efficiency to Ukraine, that got Mr. Putin on a phone call. Mr. Putin wasn't really calling, wasn't really asking Donald Trump for anything, but then all of a sudden it comes to a moment when he wanted to have this phone call. So Washington Post editorial from a few days back at the end of last week was in fact praising the strategy pursued by Donald Trump. Do you think this strategy is gone again, gone in the wind, never coming back, or maybe there is something that Donald Trump really wanted? He wanted the phone call from Putin. He wanted to pressure him, and he wants to meet him and challenge him again on, as you said, favorable grounds, but with an intention actually to enforce at least a ceasefire according to his wishes.
Yes, so I guess the recounting of the facts you just did is correct, that in Alaska, according to the common understanding by now, he was almost walking out from one of the meetings when Putin was lecturing him on history of Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine. On the other hand, the strategy so far since August was extremely successful, even without Tomahawks. pushing out more than 16 of Russia's oil refineries, at least hitting them by serious airstrikes, and also approximately 20% of the output of different fuels. So the fact that they had to impose an export ban on fuel is significant. So the strategy was working. Now, my question is, and it's also to you and to the listeners, whether it is Trump's strategy or around people around Trump. And somehow that is what's not so clear. The Alaska summit was prepared by Steve Witkoff, his old-time friend. Trump's sons and Witkoff's son is doing together a crypto fund, the World Liberty Initiative. So he is more a friend than a diplomat whatsoever. And then we have Marco Rubio, the foreign minister in charge, who is happening to be also the national security advisor, a strange constellation. And maybe it's more his doing than that of Trump's. Even if Trump is furious, he might not have said against Rubio during weeks and maybe a month and a half not to help Ukraine. But I'm just not genuinely convinced that Trump is really over months having a consistent opinion. And this is more corroborated by this last phone call that could sway him again. So the question is if Marco Rubio and the establishment of the State Department will be able to push back of the daily impetus of the president or not. That's the question of the preparation of the summit. And we shouldn't forget that now it is in the hand of Rubio and he's supposed to meet Sergei Lavrov. So that we will be able to read from, hopefully from that press statement rather soon.
So, right, even before the big boys are meeting, the small boys are meeting from the same, from Kremlin and from the White House. And depending on how the preparations go, there will be exactly a follow-up, a potential meeting coming up in Budapest or not. I would bet that it is coming, or at least let's imagine this meeting is taking place. What do you mean? What do you make of Putin's game? Is he going to repeat this triumphalist walk from Alaska, showing off with President Trump, in a way normalizing his behavior in the international scene as the one who still shakes hands and have closed-door talks, intimate talks with the leader of the most potent country and a powerful country in the West, while attacking Ukraine. And my understanding is that just before the meeting will take place, barrage on Ukrainian cities and infrastructure and logistical lines is going to increase twice as much as we've seen in the recent days, because that has been the negotiating tactics of Russia before. What do you make of Putin's logic, Putin's drive for having that meeting, and what will be his win of such potential meeting?
First of all, we should not underestimate Putin and the smart moves he has demonstrated so far in the 9 months of the Trump administration. That means, just as of our talking, the last night Financial Times has published upon several sources who were talking about the meeting between Zelenskyy and Trump the last Friday, how bad it went and how word by word Trump was repeating Putin's position on certain issues. So Putin is playing rather a similar game than he was playing before the Alaska summit, hoping that he can really use Trump's vanity and attitude to impede on the Ukrainian position. And that seems to be already working out. And I don't think Putin shifted tactics. That means that he wants to gain time. And again, he could avoid the Tomahawk hit. He could avoid the oil sanctions. He could avoid so many things just by this popping up, popping down approach to Trump and showing some goodwill without delivering on it. And you know, again, coming to Budapest is at least a threefold victory. It is, first of all, an EU and NATO member state. So going there while actually being on a sanctions list, that actually even your airplane should not be allowed there. With the ICC membership of Hungary being, Hungary resigned. Just technically, it has not yet been cancelled. So the legal obligation still stands until next summer. So Hungary will be breaching international law for Putin's visit. And that is already a huge kick to the EU. And, talking about the Ukraine war in an EU member state's capital without EU representatives is one more hit. Now, if we turn the zoom down, it has already been a tactic of Putin to drive the wedge between Kiev and Budapest by provocations in Transcarpathia and in several ways. Again, Zelenskyy has repeated it earlier that he doesn't want to come to Budapest. The memory of the 94 Budapest Memorandum is not such a success story. So understandably, the relationship and the chemistry between him and Viktor Orbán is also not the best. So therefore, Budapest is a choice that can again bring Zelenskyy against Hungary, the Hungarian government, and it's also a place where it's very difficult to host Zelenskyy, even if recently he said that he would come, which is a huge change in his attitude, but he is not invited. And then, of course, Putin is also playing his long game with the identitarian parties inside Europe, so elevating Viktor Orbán in this by his own state visit is an extreme push and support to all these forces, extremist forces inside Europe. So it's not only helping Viktor Orbán, but all the allies that he has been crediting, like Vox or Le Rassemblement National, and all the rest of the friends in AfD and FPÖ and other parties. So it's at least a three-level game besides the concrete question in Ukraine.
Hello again! If you're enjoying this episode, make sure to give us a rating. It really helps boost our platform and invite more guests for you, our listeners.
Speaking of Viktor Orbán, that seems to be a question already answered in your previous remarks, but I just wanted to dig deeper and ask about what can go wrong, of course. But first, I would say, summarizing your arguments, that yes, indeed, he is going to use this if a meeting takes place in service of building up his position against the other identitarian nationalist movements, the Patriots for Europe movement that he has constructed in the European Parliament, the cross-party alliance of people and parties alike his. And then there is a card he probably wants to have on display to his domestic public. We're only 6 months, less than 6 months ahead of general elections in Hungary. Whether he would beat the record, absolute record in the post-war Europe and serve the fourth term as a leader of a country, coming also, with for the fifth, actually, that would be really in question. And of course, getting a sort of a peace deal in Budapest would give him a lot of fuel. Here's the catch. It is unlikely that there would be a peace deal in Budapest, according to the analysis of the positions and drivers of the two other players, the only players who dictate the rules in the case of that meeting. So I think this is not necessarily playing into his advantage, but he may still use the opportunity and say, yes, I am among the mightiest. And it's really important in describing the type of politics often referred to as nationalist politics of Viktor Orbán, that he's not the typical 19th century nationalist or 20th century nationalist that would build up military might, soldiers in the army, all the aggressive moves. He's rather the appeaser. He says, peace is something that defines my nationalist message, because our nation, our tradition, or whatever is what I am truly honoring. But in the sense of international system, he basically says might makes right. And the mightiest are coming to town. So in that sense, he might be selling a message to his audience. Botond, I guess I'm just trying to ask you, what do you make of his chances in the election game against the background of such a potential visit?
Very good question. And indeed, the electoral court is the immediate and most important for him, as the opposition has never been so united as this time, with the TISA party being member of the EPP in the European Parliament. And currently, the polling shows a double-digit advantage to TISA. So I believe Orbán is really ready to pull games that probably he was not needed to do in previous elections. That's one thing. Now, the polarization in Hungary is quite extreme. I don't need to explain it to Polish or recently even to Czech audiences. We have all been through polarized elections. But talking about Ukraine is extremely difficult to the Hungarian public. The pro-Russian stance has been so widespread and repeated in the public media so many times and in different ways that the Hungarian public opinion has shifted. And that must be taken also into account by the opposition party. Putting that aside, Orbán has always been very clear that he is playing the loyalty game, also domestic politics level as well as in foreign policy. So Orbán has friends, or as that's how he calls it. I don't think it's necessarily reciprocal. But he is talking about Netanyahu, about Trump, about other politicians as, being in the loyal patriot family. And I think this is a show of, or a demonstration of loyalty to Trump. And let me highlight here something. Often we talk about their relationship, and certainly there is a chemistry working. However, there are significant tensions in the Hungarian-American relationship. One is, of course, China. So Orbán cannot deliver on China, and therefore he has to show something else, somewhere else, namely having this summit in Budapest, because he will never be able to kick out all the Chinese investment, and he is not ready to do that, and there is no intention whatsoever in this regard. The other was, of course, the US question of the energy sanctions that would have hit Hungary the hardest among the EU member states. So Hungary is actually in the crosshair of the US. And therefore, this is a counterbalance act by Orbán to Trump. And we should not underestimate that it's just a symbolic diplomatic gesture, but not a hard delivery on policy. So I think that must be said out loud, how sensitive this balance is. Now, he has been pursuing this connectivity foreign policy. He calls it connectivity, to have a good connection to all the actors. Well, they never added in the footnote that except Brussels. So it's strange that they want to have good relationships with Beijing, with Moscow, and with the White House, but not with Brussels or Berlin or the immediate partners. That's pretty strange when you look at the meta level of their definition of connectivity. But let's not get lost in the political communication. One last point. I believe it is clear that the peace summit is actually, at best case, a ceasefire summit. Even ceasefire will be extremely difficult. No one will be able at this point in 2 weeks to sign something that is enforceable. There is no one to enforce it. And we have been over and over this question a lot of times. However, we should not underestimate the communication capability of the Hungarian government to play the blame game and to put the blame on Zelenskyy. Even if he's not there, even more, he could be blamed that it was his fault why Putin couldn't sign the big peace agreement. So I'm afraid that we might see this blame game happen, given the potential probability of the outcome.
We will have to wait and see, but we will be closely looking and providing further analysis. It was such a pleasure to talk to you, Botond, and to hear your expert commentary on the game. Mr. Trump, Mr. Putin, and Mr. Orbán are playing at the same time, speaking of potential upcoming meeting, a summit in Budapest. thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Wojtek.
And that's all from this week's episode of the Visegrad Insight podcast, bringing you the leading voices from Central Europe and on Central Europe.
Make sure to subscribe, and we'll be in touch next week.